Okay, let's keep on with our discussion about fractions. Well, if I wanted to describe this amount behind me, how would I do it? Well, the first thing I'd want to know is what am I working with? I see that there's 2 of something colored in, but how would I know what unit I'm working with? Units are super important descriptors for the amount we have, right? Got to know that. Makes a huge difference. Like if I was going to say, I'll give you one of these bills, dollar bills, you would probably, before you chose, you'd probably want to know what the units were. Some of them, one of the units would be, one of them was a $10 bill. That's a certain unit. And the other was a $1 bill. And that's a different type of unit, right? A unit describes something about the amount. So I bet you'd pick the one that was $10, right? Anyway, how are we going to find out what unit we're working with here? Well, you already know that the unit is described in the denominator. And you know by now the way you find the unit is you ask yourself, how many of this amount does it take to make the whole? And in this case, it takes 4 of that amount to make the whole. That would be 1/4. But I'm describing more than just 1/4. I'm describing 2/4. And remember, that's fourths, not 4/4. It's a different thing. It looks like a 4, but it really is fourths. And it's a label telling us how many parts are in the whole. Or another way of saying it would be, it tells us what the unit, the name of the unit we're working with. Let's go down to this one. How would you describe this amount? Well, you'd say, okay, how many parts are in the whole? So I like, when I'm working with fractions, I often think about the denominator first. I'm like, okay, what unit am I working with? The way to determine that is how many parts in the whole. You've just determined that we're working with fifths, like THS, fifths. Lots of kids get confused and think that's just a 5. But we know that's not a 5, that's fifths, and it's describing how many parts make up the whole. Or another way of saying it, it describes how many, the name of the unit, like a label. And we have 1 of them. Since we're just describing 1 of the unit, we call that a unit fraction. Now I could add another unit fraction together, 1/5 and another 5th. How much would I have then? Well, there's still fifths, right? There's still fifths. So I know my unit. We're working with fifths. I just now have, the amount has increased, and now I have 2/5. So that would be adding fractional amounts. Well, let's talk about different ways you're going to see these fractions represented. Might see a model, an area model. Might see a model that looks like this when we're trying to describe an amount of, and let's just try to describe 1/5. But you also could see a model like this, which is a number line, right? And I have to, again, if I want to know what unit to call this amount, I have to say, okay, where's the whole? There's 1 whole. So from the distance from here to here is representing 1 whole. And then I have to say, well, how many of this amount does it take to make the whole? And it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of that amount to make a whole. And that's how I know that that is 1/5. I know that the unit we're working with are fifths, and it looks like they're trying to describe 1 of those fifths. So you might see a model like this, you might see a model on a number line, or you may see a model that looks like this down here. And that is a fraction of a group. There's a group of stars there, and we are just describing a fractional amount of that group of stars. What would I call that? If this is my whole group, I can find out the unit I'm working with, or the label denominator I would give to this amount. How many parts are in the whole? 5. And that's 1 of the 5 parts. So that is a 5th. And since there's 1 of them that I'm trying to highlight, it would be 1/5. Numerator, denominator. And remember, the denominator describes how many parts are in the whole. If you can get that clear in your head now, as you're starting to work with fractions, you will be way ahead of the game.